Welcome to an extra episode of Salsidoparanormal. I'm your host, James Salcido, and tonight I'm going to be talking about comic books and the paranormal. As always, you can find all episodes of the show along with links to social media and other ways to contact me at the podcast page, and that is salsidoparanormal.podbean.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.podbean.com. Always happy to hear from you all, whether you have comments or questions or topic suggestions or accounts of paranormal experiences, whether they're your own or from others that you trust. Happy to either read those or have you join me on the show to talk about them. Thank you all for being here and listening, whether you are here for the live streams on Discord or if you listen to the podcast or YouTube feeds or on the Troubled Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting. There you can hear replays of 2 episodes of my show every night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right before Troubled Minds Radio comes on. And as always, I want to thank Michael Strange, host of Troubled Minds Radio, for having me on the network and putting all my shows up there. If you'd like to support my show, there are different ways to do that. You can always share the show with others and rate and review it on your favorite podcast platform. You can also find books I've written over on Amazon, paranormal fiction and nonfiction, including my most recent release, Salsido Paranormal Experiences. You can also sign up to the Patreon page and get one extra episode of true paranormal stories from the web every week whenever possible. And you can just make one-time donations through PayPal. Support is never expected but always appreciated, as there are expenses in making these shows, from equipment to research materials to travel expenses in some cases. So that takes care of the usual introduction. This is something that's been on my mind a lot lately because of experiences I've had recently. It feels like I feel like I've had involving alternate or parallel universes, and of course, the way I appear to have accessed those is through dreams or through sleep. But of course, in fiction and in reports from other people, that is not always the only way to do that. And the event that I want to talk about tonight, the comic book event, is a major story, at least in terms of the X-Men, their comics and their history from the 1990s. And that is called Age of Apocalypse. So let me get back to the file here I'm using, or the document here I'm using to as a guide here. This happened in 1995. So spoilers for a nearly 30-year-old event. So if you're really into the comics and everything and haven't read this and you really want to, you might want to skip these couple of or few shows. I'm not sure how many it's going to take to cover this event, but the purpose of these shows, really, these shows where I cover fictional stories, is to highlight the aspects that are in them that seem to be connected or even similar versions of. I can't even talk here. They seem to be about things that happen, according to people here in the real world, quote unquote real world, that people experience, and but they're used in these stories. So now the other amazing thing about this event is when it happened, it took the comics that were originally in the X-Men family of titles. There were several of them at the time because in the 90s they really spread out. 80s and 90s, they had a couple of teams of X-Men. They had a couple of other spin-off teams, couple of, I think, one or two junior teams in that time period, as in teams of younger characters that were sort of being trained by the older characters. But anyway, when this happened, all of the X-Men related titles were that were ongoing at the time were either changed or replaced, depending on how you want to look at it. And here is why this happened. So in in around this time, uh, let's see here. Let me get to the actual summary here. So also, I'm going to be mentioning characters that I cannot, of course, give you complete descriptions of the history of all these characters as I go, because otherwise that's all I'll be doing, and I won't ever get to the story. But the story starts off with um, a a young man named David Haller, yeah. He is actually the son of Charles Xavier. Now, Charles Xavier, of course, is the one who founded the X-Men and Xavier's school and everything. That, of course, became a huge part of Marvel over the years. And Xavier was a possibly the most powerful human telepath on the planet in the comics. And so his son, no surprise here, is also really powerful. He has other abilities though, not just he has a completely different set of powers. And he also, this character, he's known as Legion, is sort of his code name or another name he uses at times, because he has hundreds of personalities in his mind, and each one of these personalities has different abilities, different mutant abilities, powers that he can use by accessing these personalities. But of course, the 90s is a big time for the X-Men, so there's been a lot going on between Xavier and Magneto, who is sort of an on-again, off-again enemy of the X-Men. He's actually joined them. He's gone back and forth between working with them and then working against them over the years. But he's also done some terrible things to humanity, in his mind, in defense of mutant kind. Whereas Xavier, of course, wants peace between everyone. And so Legion, at some point, decides he really wants to help his father and make Xavier's dream of peaceful coexistence between mutants and humans, make that happen. And he decides the best way to do this would be to go back in time and kill Magneto. So he uses his powers to travel back to a time when, back in time to a point where the two are together. Magneto and Xavier are together, but of course at this point they're still friends in the past here. And Legion goes to kill Magneto, fires an energy beam at Magneto, and of course Xavier, because of his personality, and he jumps in front of this beam, and it kills Xavier. Xavier's own son kills him, and this completely rewrites, or at least creates an entirely new timeline in the multiverse, where Xavier never formed the X-Men. He never worked with mutants the way he did in the mainstream, the main continuum of events in the comic books. And so everything in the world is changed because of this. And the only person that remembers all this at the time is another one of the X-Men named Bishop. Actually, that's his last name. And who actually went back in time to try to stop Legion from doing any harm to the time stream, basically. And he fails. And Bishop ends up in this world where everything is different and his memories are all jumbled. And he knows that something is not right about this world that he's found himself in. So, getting back to the document here, because I'd read the whole story back when I could read comic books, and it was, to me, it was just really amazing. So, anyway, so because of this, Magneto, because of Xavier sacrificing himself to save Magneto, Magneto believes in Xavier's dream of a peaceful coexistence, again, between mutants and humans. Meanwhile, one of the main enemies of the X-Men is also around at this time, and of course throughout all this time, and that would be Apocalypse. He is a major enemy of the X-Men. He's really uh, played major parts in a lot of storylines over the years. He is basically this ancient mutant that is immortal, or at least nearly so, who who is takes advantage of this change in the this timeline, and he is himself able to sort of travel through, or at least be aware of different timelines and everything through his own various technology and powers. So in this new universe, this new timeline, he decides that with Xavier dead, this is the perfect time for him to take over the world. And he starts this right after Xavier's death in this new timeline. And so he now he does this 10 years earlier in this timeline than he does in the main universe. So, and of course, Magneto makes his own version of the X-Men just as Apocalypse starts to go to war with the world. And despite the X-Men trying to stop Apocalypse, he's able to conquer all of North America. And eventually, mutants are considered the ruling class, which is sort of the opposite of what it was in the mainstream. So you have this idea of sort of the upside down, this world where it seems like to a lot of to some people it would seem like, well, everything kind of sort of worked out, but not really. But anyway, so this whole world is really amazing because it has many of the characters that anyone who's familiar with the comics, it has all these characters that people are familiar with, but because they never had any contact with Xavier, their lives in some cases go in completely different directions from the way they went before. And so that is one of the fascinating things about this event, because some characters, they sort of in general stay true to what they were in the mainstream, but others, they take completely different paths that you would never have expected them to take. And it's all because of this reality being altered in such a degree. And this made me think of, this whole storyline is sort of a really extreme version, or expanded version, and I guess extreme version, of what people talk about with the Mandela effect. Of course, with that, and I should have looked this up and I forgot, the idea that Nelson Mandela, this historical figure, some people have memories of him dying years earlier than he actually did. And to them, they remember things happening a certain way. And hearing news reports about this way back before there was nearly as much sort of really before there was any kind of AI news that you could easily make AI say whatever you want to, or before any of that was really around. And so that's just one example of this idea of people somehow being in one universe and then through some unknown means ending up in another universe where things happen in a different way, or at different points in time from one universe to the other. And this event, this Age of Apocalypse, is, like I said, a more extreme version of that. I mean, it's almost like the ultimate extreme version of that, where you have this figure that, granted, he is a major part in the comics, in this world. But yeah, of course, they use that to the writers use that to make completely different, even though somewhat still familiar world. So anyway, I haven't done one of these reviews of a major event like this in a while. So thank you all for bearing with me here as I try to get through this. So anyway, this story starts off with Magneto and his X-Men after this whole other universe has been made, and so Apocalypse, even with the X-Men fighting him, still manages to take over the entire North American continent and goes after humans, regular humans, and just basically tries to kill as many as he can and enslave the rest. And so and as part of this, and to make sure that no one can really ever challenge him, Apocalypse has uses other mutants and other technology to hunt down all the different people in the world that have any kind of telepathic or temporal, as in time related abilities, have them hunted down and killed in many cases. And so, meanwhile, as all this is going on, the changes to the universe, to the timeline, start a chain reaction far off in space with something else that any fans of the comics may be familiar with. This Macron crystal, it's of course a big part of the comics and everything in the mainstream universe, but it's stable there. But because of the events that happen in this universe and how chaotic it is, and just it was not supposed to happen the way it did, this crystal starts to expand and grow, and out into space, throughout space. And of course, if it keeps on doing that, eventually it could destroy the universe. So that's the setup really for the whole major event, or the whole timeline, or the whole story here. You have this. At first, it just seems like a threat that is limited to Earth, and then you find out that no, it's a huge problem that could destroy all of reality as all these characters know it. So, this article here I'm reading, and it's actually a Wikipedia entry. I will share the link. I already put it in the chat, and I'll share it in the episode descriptions too. So the first series of comics here, this title they mention here is X-Men Alpha, which is like the introduction to this whole series, and it's what launched the whole story. So it shows how many of the popular characters in the X-Men comics have been changed by by never having any contact with Xavier. So Bishop, of course, who is this, he's sort of a refugee from another universe at this point, another time, which is a continuing theme with him. This is a character, he has the ability to absorb any kind of energy that is fired at him. And then fire it back in his own way. But he finds Magneto again in this world, and he has fragmented memories of the way the world should be, and Magneto assigns the X-Men and other allies different missions as is going on in his efforts to try to eventually take down Apocalypse. Some teams or some missions are to gather other allies in an effort to take Apocalypse down, to free the rest of the world from Apocalypse, while others are basically just meant to continue the resistance. And so this is where all the other titles in this whole temporary um, temporary lineup of comics. This is where all of those are started. So the first one it mentions here is called Excalibur, and that's Calibre. Now, there was another version of something similar, another comic that was known as Excalibur, but it was spelled like the sword. And it was actually originally it featured a team of heroes connected to the X-Men, even having a couple of the X-Men with them for a while, a few of them with them for a while, that were there to protect the UK, to protect England. But in this universe, this story focuses on Nightcrawler, who is a mutant that has the ability to teleport. Wow, we're already getting close to the end of this first episode here, so that's pretty amazing. I figured this would take a few episodes. So he is sent by Magneto to find Destiny, who is another mutant that is able to get images or glimpses or visions of the future. And the point of this is to see if she can verify Bishop's story that everything is not as it should be. And so Nightcrawler is able to track Destiny down, and along the way he finds different other mutants that people are familiar with, and a group starts to form around him as they're trying to find Destiny. And of course they run into Mystique, who is a shapeshifter, who is also Nightcrawler's mother, and so who has also been sent by Magneto for various missions, I'm imagining, because it's what she usually does. And the title of that comic comes from the bullets that she uses in her weapons, which are simply stamped with an X. And of course, this title focuses on a group of mutants, which is, of course, that's where the whole X gene and the X-Men label comes from. And so that's the basis of that series. I'm not going to, and this article here does not go into descriptions of how everything works out. And I don't think that's quite as important to what we're going to be talking about in these shows as the idea of all these people acting in different ways. For instance, I can just tell you all, Nightcrawler in this universe is a lot more serious, a lot darker, and a lot more intense in a lot of ways in this other universe because of everything that he went through without Xavier getting involved in his life. He's a lot more serious and seems almost to be almost not evil, but just very almost more like Wolverine in a way, in that he's a lot more serious and he's just there to get things done that need to be done, and if he has to fight to do it, he will do that. So, but yeah, so I think that's a good place to leave off for this first episode on this whole storyline. And we'll see how many more episodes it takes. I think it'll only take another few at the most to get through this story. But thank you all for being here, and I will talk to you all next time on Salsidoparanormal. Take care.